Once upon a time, a little girl whispered to Santa Claus that this would be her mother's last Christmas, unaware that he was a millionaire in disguise. What he did changed their lives forever. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. The sound of his Italian leather shoes echoed across the marble of Oakwood Mall as Richard Miller walked briskly and determinedly toward the second floor. At 38, he bore the weight of building a real estate empire that moved millions of dollars annually. But in that December moment, the eve of Christmas, he felt like a teenager about to do something completely ridiculous. "Mr. Miller, are you sure you want to do this?" asked Sarah, his marketing assistant, trying to keep up with his hurried pace while carrying a red bag with a Santa Claus costume. "I can hire a professional actor. It would be much more suitable for your image." Richard stopped abruptly and turned to her, his brown eyes reflecting a mix of irritation and resignation. His neatly trimmed three-day beard and graying temples betrayed the stress of the last few years, managing Miller Realty alone, specializing in luxury condos in West Side Los Angeles. "Sarah, you've been nagging me for 3 weeks about how our company needs a more humanized image after that report on gentrification in West Side. Now, I agree to participate in your charity campaign, and you want to back out," he said, adjusting the Gucci tie that cost more than many people earned in a month. "It's not backing out, sir. It's just that—" Sarah hesitated, observing the frantic movement of families with children running back and forth, carrying shopping bags, and heading toward the line for Santa set up near the central fountain of the mall. "You're not very good with kids. When was the last time you talked to a child who wasn't Isabella?" The mention of his 12-year-old daughter made Richard frown. Isabella was studying at Phillips Academy, one of the most expensive boarding schools in the world, and only came to Los Angeles during the December and July holidays. Even when she was home in their 8,600-square-foot penthouse in Beverly Hills, conversations between father and daughter were formal, punctuated by expensive gifts and awkward silences. "Listen, Sarah," he said, lowering his voice as he noticed some people starting to look in their direction. "You said this social action would appear on the company's Instagram, on LinkedIn, across all digital channels, that it would show the human side of Miller Realty. So that's what we're going to do." Richard took the bag from Sarah's hands and headed to the small makeshift dressing room behind the Christmas set. The space smelled of hot glue and fresh paint, with walls covered in contact paper mimicking wood and a white plastic chair where he would sit to greet the children. 20 minutes later, he emerged from the dressing room unrecognizable. The white fake beard completely covered his face, the small round glasses disguised his eyes, and the foam belly made the elegant businessman disappear entirely within the loose costume. Only his hands, always well-groomed and without a ring since he became a widower 3 years ago, betrayed his true identity. "Wow, Mr. Miller, you look—" Sarah stopped, surprised by the transformation. "You look perfect. The kids are going to love it." Richard looked at himself in the small, foggy mirror of the dressing room. It was strange to see himself like this, completely disguised. In recent years, he had been used to being recognized wherever he went, in business magazines, at social events, in restaurants frequented by the elite of Los Angeles. There, dressed as Santa Claus, he was just another holiday character amid the commercial chaos of December. The first hour passed without major incidents. Dozens of children took turns on his lap, asking for bicycles, dolls, video games, and smartphones. Richard mechanically repeated the phrases that Sarah had rehearsed with him. "Have you been a good child this year? What do you want to receive from Santa? Promise to be even more obedient next year?" That's when she appeared. The girl couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with curly hair tied back with a faded pink elastic and large expressive eyes that seemed to hold much more wisdom than her age suggested. She wore a light blue dress, visibly worn but clean and well kept, and white sneakers that had seen better days. She approached Santa's chair with a shyness that contrasted with the excitement of the other children. "Hi, Santa," she said softly, standing on her tiptoes to speak close to his ear. "Can I tell you a little secret?" Richard felt something different about this child. While the others came rushing in, shouting their requests and posing for their parents' photos, she approached with an almost adult seriousness. "Of course, my dear," he replied, trying to find the right tone for Santa's voice. "You can tell me anything you want." The girl leaned in even closer, and Richard felt the warmth of her breath through the fake beard. What she said next would completely change the course of his life. "It's my mom's last Christmas," she whispered, with a naturalness that froze Richard's blood. "The doctors said that after the holidays she has to go to heaven to be with Jesus. I don't want her to be sad during Christmas, so can you help?" Richard felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. His years of experience in complex negotiations, closing million-dollar contracts, managing corporate crises, nothing had prepared him for that moment. The devastating simplicity with which the girl spoke about her mother's impending death left him completely speechless. He stammered, momentarily forgetting that he was representing Santa Claus. "What's your name, dear?" "Emma," she replied, still whispering. "My mom's name is Jessica. She works really hard to pay for the medicine, but I see her cry secretly in the bathroom. Can you make her happy this Christmas? I don't need a present for myself. I just want her to smile for real." At that moment, Richard completely forgot where he was. He forgot about Sarah's cameras, capturing everything for the company's social media, forgot about the line of children waiting, even forgot to maintain the Santa Claus act. He looked directly into Emma's eyes and saw a maturity that his own daughter Isabella, who was 5 years older, had never shown. "Emma," he said, lowering his voice, even more so only she could hear. "Where do you live? How can I find your mom?" The girl seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if she was about to share a very important secret. "We live in Little Tokyo, near the Japanese school. My mum works cleaning offices at night so she can be with me during the day. She said she can't miss work because she needs the holiday bonus to buy my medicine for January." "Medicine?" Richard asked, feeling his chest tighten. "I was sick too, but I'm getting better. That's why we spent all the money, to cure me first. Now it's my mum's turn, but she said her medicine is very expensive." Emma spoke all this with a naturalness that broke Richard's heart. Sarah approached discreetly, worried about the delay in the conversation, but Richard made a nearly imperceptible gesture for her to step back. "Emma," he said, placing his hands on the girl's small shoulders, "you are a very special child. Santa Claus will take care of everything, okay? Your mum will have the best Christmas of her life, I promise." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled in a way Richard would never forget. "Thank you, Santa Claus. I knew you would help me. Can I give you a hug?" Richard pulled her in for a tight embrace, feeling tears wet his own eyes behind the costume glasses. In that moment, he was no longer Richard Miller, the millionaire businessman used to solving all problems with money. He was simply a man touched by the purity and generosity of a 7-year-old child who, even facing the prospect of losing her mother, only thought of her well-being. "Everything will be all right, Emma," he whispered in her ear. "Santa Claus never breaks a promise." When the girl pulled away and waved a shy goodbye before disappearing into the mall crowd, Richard sat there, completely transformed by those few minutes of conversation. Sarah approached again, concerned. "Mr. Miller, are you okay? You were with that child for a long time." Richard took off the costume glasses and quickly wiped his eyes. "Sarah, we're done for today. Get this outfit off me." "But, sir, we still have 2 hours of programming." "It's over," he repeated with a firmness that allowed no questioning. "And Sarah, I want you to investigate something for me, discreetly." As he returned to the dressing room to change clothes, Richard knew he had just made a promise that would change not only Emma and her mother's lives, but also his own. For the first time in years, he had a purpose that went beyond closing deals and accumulating wealth. He was going to find out who Jessica was, where she worked, what her medical situation was, and most importantly, how he could fulfill the promise made to that extraordinary girl who had just entered his life like a Christmas gift he didn't even know he needed. Richard couldn't sleep that night, lying in his king-size bed in his penthouse in Beverly Hills, looking through the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles. He couldn't stop thinking about Emma's face and the naturalness with which she had spoken about her mother's death. At 5 in the morning, he gave up trying to sleep. He put on his silk robe and went down to his home office, a 400-square-foot space with mahogany bookshelves filled with management and economics books that he rarely read, but that impressed visitors. He turned on the computer and began to do something he hadn't done in years. Personal research, driven by feelings instead of business interests. Jessica. Little Tokyo. Cleaning offices, he murmured to himself as he typed different combinations of words into Google. He didn't have her last name, didn't know the exact address, but something inside him told him he needed to find this woman. At exactly 7 o'clock, his phone rang. It was Sarah. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. About that research you asked me to do yesterday." "Go ahead, Sarah," he said, feeling his heart race. "It was easier than I thought. I spoke with the mall administration and they gave me the contact for the cleaning company. From there, I got a list of all the employees named Jessica. There are 12 in total, but only one works the night shift and lives in Little Tokyo." Richard held the phone tightly. "Continue." "Jessica Oliveira, 28 years old. She has been working for SuperClean for 2 years, always from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. She has a 7-year-old daughter enrolled at ELA Academy, right in the Little Tokyo neighborhood. And, sir," Sarah paused, "there's one more thing." "What is it?" "She cleans offices in the Metropolitan Tower, in the financial district. That commercial building our company has managed for 5 years. Richard felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Jessica worked in one of the buildings he managed. Technically, he was her boss, without ever knowing of her existence. "Sarah, I want her complete dossier on my desk in 1 hour. Time, address, work history, medical situation, everything you can find." "Mr. Miller, isn't this a bit invasive?" "1 hour, Sarah," he said, hanging up the phone without further explanation. 2 hours later, Richard had in his hands a 6-page report on the life of Jessica Smith. What he read left him even more moved by the courage of that family. Jessica graduated in education from Novdahulu University, where she earned honors in 2019. She worked for 2 years as a teacher at a private school in the southern part of the city, but left her career when Emma was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at the age of 5. For 1.5 years, she dedicated herself entirely to her daughter's treatment, spending all her savings and incurring debts to pay for chemotherapy at a private clinic. When the money ran out, she managed to get a night shift at a cleaning company, specifically because the hours allowed her to accompany Emma during the day for chemotherapy sessions at General Hospital. She worked 6 days a week, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., slept a few hours in the morning, and spent her afternoons at the hospital or taking Emma to medical appointments. They lived in a 375-square-foot apartment on Maple Street, paying $250 in rent. Jessica's monthly income was $280, and she managed to supplement it by doing typing work from home on weekends. Emma had been in remission for 6 months, but now It was Jessica who was facing health problems. The medical report attached to the dossier revealed that Jessica had been diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer 3 months ago. The basic health plan offered by the cleaning company only covered the diagnosis, but not the specialized treatment she needed. The private oncologist recommended a combined therapy that would cost approximately $3,000 per month for 6 months. Richard leaned back in the leather chair, absorbing the magnitude of the situation. Jessica was literally dying because she couldn't afford treatment after spending everything to save her daughter. And Emma, at just 7 years old, carried the weight of knowing she could lose her mother due to financial issues. He picked up the intercom and called his driver. "David, prepare the car. We're going to the financial district." "Any scheduled meetings, sir?" "No. I'm making a surprise visit." The Metropolitan Tower was one of the symbols of Richard's business success. 25 floors of corporate offices with multinational companies, renowned law firms, and high-end consulting firms. He rarely visited the building, leaving the administration to his team, but that day he needed to see with his own eyes where Jessica worked. He arrived at the building at 11:30 p.m., when the flow of executives and employees had completely ceased. The night security guard, Mr. Orlando, recognized him immediately. "Good evening, Dr. Miller. What a surprise to see you here at this hour." "Good evening, Orlando. I just came to check on a few things. Has the cleaning crew arrived?" "They got here half an hour ago, Doctor. They're starting on the upper floors." Richard went up to the 15th floor, where the offices of the German multinational occupied 3 entire floors. The elevators were silent at that hour, and the building had a completely different atmosphere from the daytime hustle and bustle. When the elevator doors opened, he saw her. Jessica was facing away, vacuuming one of the hallways. She wore the navy blue uniform of the cleaning company, had her brown hair tied back in a ponytail, and moved with an efficiency that revealed experience. Even from a distance, Richard could tell she was thinner than she should be, and her movements had a slowness that might indicate extreme fatigue. He hid behind a column, watching her work. Jessica cleaned each desk, each phone, each computer with meticulous care. She was not someone who did the job just to check it off the list. There was pride in her work, even though it was a task far below her professional qualifications. At one point, she stopped the vacuum and leaned against the wall, bringing her hand to her chest with a pained expression. Richard instinctively moved closer, but she quickly composed herself and returned to work. "Excuse me," a voice said behind him. Richard turned and saw a woman in her 50s, also in uniform, looking at him with curiosity. "Sorry to bother you, but are you lost? I'm Miss Johnson, the supervisor of the cleaning team." Richard hesitated, realizing he was in a delicate situation. "I'm one of the building administrators. I was checking on how your team is doing." "Oh, I see. You can rest assured, sir. Jessica over there is one of our best employees. Punctual, careful, never a problem. She's a gem." "Jessica?" Richard pretended not to know the name. "What is she like as a person?" Ms. Johnson looked in Jessica's direction with maternal affection. "Poor girl. She goes through so much that it breaks your heart. Raising her little girl alone, the child had cancer. And now it's her who's sick, but she never complains, you know, always with a smile on her face, always helpful to her colleagues. She has an education, graduated from college, but she's here because life didn't give her other options." "And her daughter is okay now?" "Thank God, yes. Little Emma is already cured. A sweet child, very polite. Sometimes Jessica brings her here on weekends when she needs to work extra hours. The girl stays quiet, drawing or doing homework." Richard's heart ached even more. Emma accompanied her mother to work on weekends when she should be playing or resting. "And about Jessica's current health issue?" Miss Johnson lowered her voice and leaned closer. She has cancer, poor thing. Found out a few months ago, but she doesn't have money for proper treatment. The company's health plan is very basic, only covers Medicaid. She's trying. Jessica was speaking to the public itself, but we know how it is. The lines, the delays, the lack of medicine. I'm afraid that by the time it's her turn, it might be too late. At that moment, Jessica turned and noticed the presence of the two conversing. She approached with a polite smile, despite being visibly exhausted. "Good evening. Is there a problem with the cleaning?" Up close, Richard could see Jessica's eyes, the same expressive eyes as Emma's, but burdened with a worry and fatigue that a 28-year-old woman shouldn't have to carry. She was naturally and unpretentiously beautiful, with delicate features that motherhood and hardships had made more pronounced. "No, not at all," said Ms. Johnson. "This young man here is from administration and was praising your work." "Thank you," Jessica said, looking directly at Richard. For a moment he had the impression that she was studying him, as if something in his face seemed familiar, but she showed no sign of recognizing him. "Your work is truly impeccable," Richard managed to say, trying to keep his voice steady. "How long have you been working here?" 2 years. I started when my daughter was undergoing medical treatment and needed a schedule that would allow me to be with her during the day." "And is your daughter doing well now?" Jessica's face lit up with the first genuine smile since the conversation began. "She's great, thank God. In complete remission for 6 months. She's a very strong, very brave girl. She's the one who gives me strength to keep going every day." Richard felt a lump in his throat. The way Jessica spoke about Emma was identical to how Emma had spoken about her mother, with a pure and selfless love that he rarely witnessed in his social circle. "Well, I'll let you get back to work," he said, realizing he was risking too much by staying there. "Keep it up." As he walked away, Richard heard Ms. Johnson say to Jessica, "What a nice young man, right? Not every administrator comes here to check on the service personally." Indeed, when the elevator going down to the ground floor, Richard made a decision. He was going to help Jessica and Emma, but he needed to do it the right way. He couldn't just show up offering money. From what he had observed, Jessica had too much pride and dignity to accept charity. He needed to find a way to help without her feeling humiliated or indebted. When he got home at 2 in the morning, Richard already had a plan. The next morning, Richard cancelled all meetings and called an emergency assembly with his trusted team: Sarah, his personal attorney, Dr. Robert Smith, and Carla, the human resources manager of the construction company, gathered in the conference room overlooking Avenue of the Americas. "I need to create a charity organization," Richard announced bluntly. "Something legitimate, with a tax ID, complete documentation, focused on helping families undergoing medical treatment." Dr. Robert adjusted his glasses, intrigued. "Richard, this will take time, bureaucracy, significant initial capital. May I ask what the urgency is?" "The urgency is that a 7-year-old child could lose her mother because she doesn't have $15,000 for treatment," Richard replied with a firmness that surprised everyone. Sarah and Carla exchanged glances. In 15 years of working for Richard, they had never seen him show genuine interest in social issues that weren't directly related to the company's business. "Mr. Miller," Carla said carefully, "do you know this family?" "Let's just say I've recently become aware of their situation." Richard stood up and began to pace the room. "I want you to create the Hope Institute. Provisional name, we can change it later. The focus will be to fund medical treatments for low-income families. I want it up and running in 2 weeks. Dr. Robert took some notes. I'll need at least $500,000 in initial capital to give credibility to the institution, and we'll need to hire a social worker, create selection criteria, establish partnerships with hospitals." "Done. Sarah, I want you to contact Dr. Patricia Yamamoto, an oncologist at Mount Sinai Hospital. She treated me when my wife, well, she's excellent. Tell her we have a patient who needs urgent care and that the Hope Institute will cover everything." "But, sir," Sarah interrupted, "the institution doesn't even exist yet." "Then make it exist," Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Carla, I want you researching other families in similar situations. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. It can't look like we're only helping one specific person." As the team mobilized to create the institute in record time, Richard spent the next few days discreetly observing Jessica and Emma's routine. He discovered that Emma studied at ELA Academy, a public school known for its quality education and strong presence of the Japanese community in the neighborhood. On Thursday morning, Richard did something he hadn't done in years. He put on a simple polo shirt, jeans and sneakers, dismissed the driver and took an Uber to Little Tokyo. He wanted to get to know the area where Jessica and Emma lived to better understand their social context. The neighborhood was bustling with preparations for the Chinese New Year that would take place in February. Red lanterns decorated the streets, and the smell of lo mein and cheese dumplings mingled in the air. Richard walked along Maple Street, observing the harmonious blend of Eastern and Western cultures that characterized the area. He found the building where Jessica and Emma lived, an old four-story building, well-maintained but visibly simple. There was no doorman, just intercoms at the entrance. Richard stood there for a few minutes, imagining what their life was like in that small apartment. "Can I help you with something?" Richard turned and saw an elderly Asian woman about 60 years old, watching him with respectful curiosity. "I was looking for information about the neighborhood. I'm thinking of moving here," he lied, improvising quickly. The woman smiled. "Oh, that's great. The neighborhood is wonderful, very safe, full of life. I'm Miss Johnson." "Kim, I've lived here for 30 years. Do you have family?" "I have a daughter," Richard replied, surprised by his own honesty. "Then you'll love it here. There's an excellent public school right around the corner, plenty of food options, and good public transportation. In this building, there's a very nice family, Jessica and her little girl, Emma. The girl is adorable, very polite, and the mother is a role model." Richard's heart raced. "Really? Oh, if you only knew the struggle they went through. The girl had cancer when she was little, and the mother did everything to take care of her. Now the girl is cured, thank God, but it seems like it's the mother who is sick. Life is sometimes very unfair, isn't it?" "Indeed," Richard agreed, feeling the weight of the situation. "But at least they have the support of the neighborhood." "Oh, yes. In this building, everyone helps each other. When Jessica needs to work on weekends, I watch Emma. Other times, Miss Johnson from the second floor makes an extra lunch and shares it with them. That's how we live here, like a family." Richard was touched by the description of the spontaneous solidarity that existed in that simple building. It was the kind of warmth that didn't exist in his luxury condo in Beverly Hills, where he barely knew the names of his neighbors. That afternoon, Emma would get out of school at 5:30 p.m. Richard knew this because he had gotten her school schedule through Sarah. At 5:20 p.m., he was strategically positioned in a bakery across from the school, sipping coffee and pretending to read the newspaper. When Emma appeared at the school exit, Richard felt the same emotional impact from their meeting at the mall. She was wearing her school uniform, a white blouse and navy blue skirt, and carrying a pink backpack that seemed too heavy for her size. Her curly hair was tied in 2 pigtails, and she walked with the same serenity that had impressed him during their first encounter. "Emma!" a female voice called out. Richard looked in the direction of the voice and saw Jessica hurrying toward them. She was wearing jeans, a white blouse, and sneakers, her hair flowing as she walked. Even with her simple outfit and the visible fatigue on her face, She had a natural beauty that drew attention. "Mommy!" Emma ran toward her mother and threw herself into her arms. Richard watched their reunion, touched by the genuine joy they showed in seeing each other, even though the separation had lasted only a few hours. It was a stark contrast to his own meetings with Isabella, which were always formal and restrained. "How was school today, my love?" Jessica asked, taking the heavy backpack off Emma's back. "It was great. Ms. Marcia said my essay about Christmas was the best in the class. And guess what? There's a charity event at school next month to collect toys for underprivileged kids. Can I participate?" "Of course you can, my princess. Let's see how we can help." Mother and daughter walked in hand down Maple Street toward home. Richard followed them at a safe distance, observing the intimacy and complicity between them. Jessica frequently stopped to point out interesting things to Emma: a cat in a window, a New Year decoration, flowers in a florist, turning the walk home into a moment of discovery and joy. "Mommy," Emma said when they stopped at a red light, "are you feeling better today?" "I am, my love. Don't worry about me, okay?" "I talked to Santa Claus at the mall," Emma said casually. "I asked him to take care of you." Richard saw Jessica crouch down to her daughter's level, tears in her eyes. "My daughter, you don't need to worry about those things. Mommy will be fine, I promise." "I know you will," Emma said with a confidence that broke Richard's heart. "Santa promised he would help, and he never breaks a promise." Jessica hugged her daughter right there on the sidewalk, and Richard had to lean against the wall of a store to keep from breaking down emotionally. Emma's unwavering faith in her promise made him even more determined to keep his word, but also more aware of the responsibility he had taken on. When they arrived at their building, Richard discreetly positioned himself behind a parked car. He saw Jessica pick up the mail at the entrance, and her expression changed completely when she opened one of the envelopes. "What's wrong, Mummy?" Emma asked, noticing the change in her mother's mood. "Nothing important, my love. Let's go upstairs." But Richard saw Jessica quickly fold a piece of paper that looked like a bill or a charge, tucking it into her pocket with a deeply worried expression. That night, after returning home, Richard called Sarah. "Is the institute ready?" "Almost, sir. Dr. Smith managed to expedite the paperwork. By Friday, we'll have the tax ID and can open the bank account. Dr. Johnson has already confirmed she can see the patient on Monday." "Perfect. Now I need you to do one more thing. Find out what Jessica Smith's financial issues are. Overdue bills, loans, financing, everything. Mr. Miller, that's very specific. She will be suspicious if someone shows up offering help for all her problems." Richard was silent for a moment, looking through the windows of his penthouse at the city lights stretching to the horizon. "Then let's do it differently, Sarah. Let's create a situation where she won't be able to refuse our help." "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow, I want a meeting with the board of Clean Co., the company where she works. We're going to make a proposal they won't be able to refuse." As Richard planned the next steps of his strategy to help Jessica and Emma, he had no idea that he was about to embark on a process that would transform not only their lives, but also his own, in ways that even his experience in complex business could not have predicted. The difference was that, for the first time in years, Richard Miller was involved in something greater than profit and assets. He was discovering what it meant to use his power and resources to create hope in the lives of people who truly needed it. And this was awakening feelings in him that he believed he had lost forever along with his wife. On Friday morning, Richard arrived at the Clean Co. office, located in a simple commercial building in Silver Lake, accompanied by Sarah and Dr. Smith. The company occupied a small room on the third floor, with basic furniture and a strong smell of cleaning products. Thomas Johnson, the owner of Clean Co., was a 55-year-old portly, sweaty man who clearly became nervous upon receiving an unexpected visit from the owner of one of his company's largest contracts. Dr. Richard, what an honor to have you here. I hope there are no issues with our services, said Thomas, offering coffee in disposable cups. On the contrary, Thomas, I'm very pleased with your work, Richard replied, sitting in the plastic chair that creaked under his weight. I'm here to make a proposal that could be very beneficial for your company. Thomas's eyes lit up. Go ahead, Doctor. Dr. Smith opened a folder and began to explain. We recently established the Hope Institute, a non-profit organization focused on assisting employees of partner companies facing medical difficulties. We want to establish Clean Co. as our first partnership. What do you mean? Thomas asked, confused. Richard leaned forward. It's simple. We will fully cover high-complexity medical treatments for Clean Co. employees who cannot afford these costs. In return, you provide us with detailed reports on the cases treated for the Institute's accountability. And what will this cost me? Thomas asked, suspicious. Nothing, Sarah replied. The Institute covers all costs. The only requirement is that you grant paid medical leave to employees during treatment and help us identify the most urgent cases. Thomas was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. It was obvious he could not understand why someone would do something like this without expecting anything in return. Dr. Richard, with all due respect, what's your interest in this? Richard had anticipated this question. Thomas, my company manages dozens of commercial buildings in Los Angeles. The quality of cleaning services directly depends on the well-being of the employees. If you have happy and healthy employees, I have better service. It's a matter of long-term business vision. The explanation made sense from a business perspective, and Thomas visibly relaxed. And how does it work in practice? He asked. Dr. Smith placed some documents on the table. You send us a list of employees facing serious medical issues. We analyze the cases and authorize treatments. The Institute pays directly to hospitals and clinics. You just ensure that the employee continues to receive their salary during their absence. And who would be the first case? Thomas asked, already imagining where the conversation would lead. We have information that one of your employees, Jessica Smith, is facing a delicate medical situation, Sarah said, consulting her notes. She would be an ideal case to start the pilot program. Thomas's face tightened slightly. Jessica, she's a good employee, but what? Richard asked, sensing the tension in the air. She never asked me for help, Doctor. She's a very proud woman. She's worked here for 2 years and has never complained about anything, never missed a day, always punctual. But she also never accepts help from anyone. What kind of help have you offered? When her daughter was sick, I offered an advance on her bonus. She refused. I offered to change her schedule to the morning shift, which pays better. She said she couldn't because she needed to take her daughter to the hospital. She's a difficult person to help. Richard and his team exchanged glances, exactly what they feared. That's why we're going to present this as a company benefit, not as charity, Dr. Smith explained. You'll say that you've secured a partnership with the Medical Assistance Institute and that all employees will have access to the benefit. And what if she becomes suspicious? Thomas, Richard said, his voice firm, do you want this partnership or not? Because I can look for another cleaning company to manage my buildings. The threat was subtle but effective. Thomas swallowed hard. Of course I want it, Dr. Richard. I'll talk to Jessica today. That same afternoon, while Richard was in his penthouse trying to focus on reading contracts, his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Mr. Richard Miller? A hesitant female voice asked. His heart raced. It was Jessica's voice. Yes, it's me. This is Jessica from Clean Co. My boss gave me your contact, said you're in charge of an institute that will cover my medical treatment. would like to speak with you in person." Richard sat in the chair, trying to control his anxiety. "Of course, Jessica. When would be convenient for you? Could you meet me tomorrow afternoon? I can't leave work tonight, and in the morning I need to take my daughter to the doctor for her follow-up." "Perfect. Where would you like to meet?" There was a pause. "Do you know the Art Museum? It's near Central Station. There's a cafe inside that's quite quiet for a conversation." Richard involuntarily smiled. The choice revealed a lot about Jessica, a public, cultural, neutral place where she would feel safe, but also showed that she was not just an uneducated woman. "I know it well. What time? 2 in the afternoon works for you?" "Perfect. How will I recognize you?" "I'll be wearing a light blue blouse, and I'll have a book in my hand, Pedagogy of the Oppressed by John Dewey." After hanging up, Richard stood still for several minutes. Jessica had chosen to carry a book by John Dewey for the meeting. It was no coincidence. It was a message. She wanted him to know that she was an educated person, aware of social issues, and that she was not naive about the power dynamics that could be at play. On Saturday, Richard arrived at the Art Museum 15 minutes before the scheduled time. He wore a smart, casual outfit, chinos, a linen shirt, and loafers. He wanted to appear approachable, but he couldn't completely deny his social standing. He found Jessica exactly where she said she would be, sitting at a table in the cafe overlooking the museum's indoor garden. She looked more beautiful than he remembered, with her hair down over her shoulders, wearing a light blue blouse that accentuated her eyes. The book by John Dewey was resting on the table, and she was sipping coffee while watching the people passing by. When Richard approached, she looked up, and he saw the exact moment she recognized him. "Mr. Richard Miller," she asked, standing politely. "Jessica, right? It's a pleasure to meet you in person." They shook hands, and Richard noticed that her hands were slightly trembling. She was nervous but trying to hide it. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me on a Saturday," she said, sitting back down. "I imagine you have a very busy schedule." "Not at all. In fact, it's a pleasure to be here." "Do you enjoy art?" he asked, gesturing to the museum around them. "I love it. I come here with my daughter sometimes. She especially enjoys the interactive exhibits, and they have a great educational program for kids." Richard sat down and ordered a coffee from the waiter. "How old is your daughter again?" 7. Emma. She's a very special girl." There was an awkward pause. Jessica fiddled with the book on the table, clearly trying to find the right words. "Mr. Richard, I'll be direct with you. I researched the Hope Institute online and found almost nothing. The website was created less than a week ago. The only information I could find is that you are the founder and that you have significant resources to fund medical treatments." Richard felt his stomach tighten. Jessica was smarter than he had anticipated. "It's true, the Institute is very new. We're just starting our activities now." "And may I ask why you decided to create this institution?" The direct question caught Richard off guard. He looked into Jessica's eyes and saw that she would not accept an evasive or corporate answer. "Jessica, I recently went through an experience that made me reflect on how I use my resources. I realized that I have the means to help people in difficult situations, and I thought it was time to do something concrete in that regard." "And why specifically medical cases?" Richard hesitated. He was entering dangerous territory. "I lost my wife 3 years ago to cancer. At the time, I had access to the best doctors, the best treatments, the best hospitals. And still I lost her. I keep thinking about how many people could be saved if they had access to the same type of treatment she had." It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Jessica studied his face for a few seconds. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said sincerely. "But I still don't understand why I was specifically chosen for this pilot program." Thomas informed us that you are facing a serious medical issue and that you do not have the resources to afford the appropriate treatment. It seemed to be exactly the type of situation the Institute was created to address. Jessica took a sip of her coffee, processing the information. Mr. Richard, I'm going to ask a question that may seem rude, but I need to ask. Do you have any information about me that goes beyond what my employer might have provided? Richard's heart stopped. It was the question he feared the most. What do you mean? Do you know about my academic background? Do you know about my daughter's medical history? Do you know where I live, where she studies? Richard felt his hands sweat. Jessica was conducting a subtle but direct interrogation. Jessica, to properly assess the cases that the Institute will address, we need detailed information. It's standard procedure. I understand. And did you read my file personally? I did. Then you know that my daughter had leukemia? I know. And you know that she has been in remission for 6 months? I know that too. Jessica placed her hands on the table and looked directly into his eyes. Mr. Richard, my daughter told me that she spoke with Santa Claus at a mall last week. She told him it was Mommy's last Christmas. Emma doesn't usually make up stories. She's a very transparent child. Richard's blood ran cold. He tried to keep a neutral expression, but he knew he was losing ground quickly. Children talk to Santa Claus about many things, he said, trying to sound casual. That's true, but Emma told me something specific, that Santa Claus promised he would take care of me. And 3 days later, my boss shows up with a proposal from a mysterious institute that wants to cover my treatment entirely. Jessica leaned forward. Mr. Richard, did you happen to dress up as Santa Claus at Oakwood Mall last week? The game was over. Richard looked at Jessica and saw that she already knew the answer. There was no point in lying anymore. Yes, he said simply. Why? Richard remained silent for long seconds, studying Jessica's face. She showed no anger or indignation, just an intense curiosity mixed with caution. It was as if she were solving a complex puzzle and had finally found the missing piece. Why did you dress up as Santa Claus? She repeated, her voice calm but determined. My marketing consultant thought it would be good for the company's image, Richard replied, knowing that the answer sounded pathetic even though it was true. And why did you decide to investigate my life after talking to Emma? Richard sighed deeply. He was tired of Jessica deserved the truth. Because what your daughter told me changed something inside of me, he said, looking directly into her eyes. A 7-year-old asked me to take care of her mother, talking about death with a naturalness that destroyed me inside. I couldn't forget. And that's why you created this whole scheme? The organization, the conversation with my boss, this charade? Jessica, I wanted to help you, but I knew you wouldn't accept if I came offering money directly. I tried to find a way to help, without making you feel humiliated. Jessica took another sip of coffee, her eyes never leaving Richard's face. Mr. Richard, may I make an observation? Of course. You spent more energy, time, and money creating this elaborate farce than you would have spent simply being honest with me from the beginning. The simplicity of the observation hit Richard like a slap in the face. She was absolutely right. You are right, he admitted. I complicated a situation that could have been much simpler. And do you know why you did that? Richard looked at her, intrigued. Why? Because you are used to controlling situations and people through money. You can't conceive of a relationship where the other person has real power of choice. The precise analysis left him speechless. Jessica continued, her voice gaining a firmness that revealed her training in pedagogy. You assumed I would refuse help out of silly pride, so you decided to manipulate me into having no choice. but you never considered the possibility of simply explaining the situation and giving me the right to decide for myself. Jessica, let me finish, please. She gently raised her hand. Do you know the difference between charity and solidarity? Richard shook his head. Charity is when someone with power gives crumbs to someone without power, maintaining the structure that created the problem. Solidarity is when people come together as equals to face difficulties together. And what do you think I was doing? Charity. Elaborate, sophisticated, well-intentioned charity, but still charity. Richard felt exposed in a way he had never experienced before. Jessica was dismantling his motivations and methods with surgical precision, but without cruelty. And how should I have done it? Jessica smiled for the first time since the beginning of the conversation. You could have come to me and said, "Hello, Jessica, I'm Richard Miller. Your daughter talked to me when I was dressed as Santa Claus and told me about your situation. I was very touched and would like to help with your medical treatment. Would you accept my help?" And would you have accepted? I don't know. It would depend on how it was offered, but at least I would have the dignity to choose. Richard fell silent, absorbing the lesson in humility he was receiving. Jessica was not being hostile, but she was being absolutely clear about how she felt regarding the situation. Jessica, may I ask one thing? Of course. How did you find out I was Santa Claus? She smiled again, this time with a playful glint in her eyes. Emma is a very observant child. When she got home from the mall, she described Santa Claus in detail. The hands, the voice, even the way he held his glasses when he was nervous. 3 days later, when my boss gave me your business card, I recognized the name. Then it was just a matter of searching your photo online. And the hands gave me away? The hands and the voice. You have a very specific accent from the West Side area, well-educated, and your hands, they are not those of someone who works with their hands. Richard looked at his own hands. Jessica was right. They were soft hands, with nails always well-groomed, without any marks of manual labor. And what do you intend to do now that you know the truth? Jessica became serious again. I need to think. It's a lot of information to process all at once. The organization is real, Jessica. It's not just a farce to help you. We already have other cases being analyzed. That may be true, but it was still created because a 7-year-old touched your heart in a mall. That's true. And do you really want to help? Or do you just want to ease your conscience? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Richard was silent for a few seconds, honestly reflecting on his motivations. Both, he finally replied. I want to help you because I genuinely care about what happens to Emma and to you. But I also can't deny that fulfilling the promise I made to a child eases a weight I carry. Jessica seemed satisfied with the honesty of his answer. What weight is that? The weight of having much and doing little. The weight of living isolated in an ivory tower while people like you struggle to survive 3 miles from my home. And your daughter. How does she fit into this story? My daughter? Richard hesitated. Isabella studies in Switzerland. She's 12, and we barely talk when she's here. Emma, at 7, shows more maturity and compassion than Isabella has ever shown. Maybe because Emma has gone through experiences that forced her to mature too soon, Jessica said softly. It's not necessarily a positive thing. You are right. I apologize for the comparison. Mr. Richard, may I make a proposal? Of course. I accept your help, but with conditions. Richard's heart raced. What conditions? First, I want to meet other cases that the organization will assist. If this is really about helping people and not just about easing your conscience because of Emma, then there should be other families benefiting. I agree. Second, I want total transparency regarding the costs of my treatment. I will sign a commitment to return the money if my financial situation improves significantly in the future. Jessica, that's not necessary. It's necessary for me. I don't want to owe favors. I want a clear and fair transaction. All right. And the third condition? I want you to meet Emma, not as Santa Claus, but as Richard Miller. If she is going to be part of our lives through this medical help, she has the right to know who you are. The idea of meeting Emma, as he himself had put it, made Richard nervous and excited at the same time. And how would you explain to her who I am? With the truth. Emma can handle the truth better than most adults. What if she doesn't like me? Then you will have to earn her trust, like any normal person. Richard smiled. You are a very difficult woman, Jessica. I am a mother protecting her daughter, Mr. Miller. If that makes me difficult, so be it. They fell silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The movement in the museum had increased, with families arriving to visit the weekend exhibitions. Mr. Miller, Jessica finally said, may I ask you a personal question? Sure. Why are you doing all this? And don't tell me it's just for Emma. There's something more, isn't there? Richard looked out the window, watching a family with 3 small children playing in the museum garden. The father was teaching the youngest son to kick a ball, while the mother set up an impromptu picnic on the lawn. Jessica, 3 years ago when my wife died, I shut myself off from the world. I sent Isabella to Switzerland because I didn't know how to cope with her pain along with my own. I threw myself into work, built a financial empire, but I forgot how to be human. He turned back to her. When Emma asked me to take care of you, she wasn't just asking me to save her mother. She was offering me a chance to save myself. And you think saving others will save you? I don't know. But I know that the first time in 3 years I felt truly alive was when I promised Emma I would take care of you. Maybe it's selfishness disguised as generosity, but it's what I have to offer right now. Jessica studied his face for long seconds. All right, Mr. Miller. Let's try to make this work. But I want you to understand. One thing, I'm not going to pretend we're friends just because you're helping me. I'll be polite and grateful, but I'm also going to be honest about what I think and feel. Can you handle that? I can. In fact, I think I need that. Then let's start over. Jessica extended her hand. Hello, Mr. Miller. I'm Jessica Smith, Emma's mother, unemployed educator, and cancer patient. Nice to meet you. Richard shook her hand, feeling for the first time since the beginning of the conversation that they were starting to build something real. Hello, Jessica. I'm Richard Miller, Isabella's father, workaholic businessman, and retired Santa Claus. The pleasure is mine. For the first time that afternoon, they both smiled at the same time. It was the beginning of a relationship that would transform the lives of everyone involved in ways neither of them could imagine at that moment. The following Tuesday, Richard was more nervous than he had ever been for any business deal in his career. He had arranged to pick up Jessica and Emma from their apartment at 2 p.m. to take them to Mount Sinai Hospital, where Dr. Johnson would conduct the first consultation of the treatment. He dismissed the driver and personally drove his black BMW to Little Tokyo. He had thought a lot about which car to use. The BMW was discreet, but still too expensive not to cause embarrassment. In the end, he decided that hiding his social status would be another form of dishonesty. When he arrived at Maple Street, Richard parked in front of Jessica's building and checked his watch. 1:55 p.m. Punctuality was something he took very seriously, a reflection of years of business meetings where 5 minutes of delay could cost millions. At exactly 2 p.m., he rang the intercom. "Hello," came Emma's voice through the intercom. "Emma, this is Richard. I'm here to pick you up for the doctor." "Mom, it's Mr. Richard." Emma shouted into the apartment. "You can come up, please. Apartment 32, third floor." Richard climbed the stairs, two at a time, feeling his heart race, not from physical exertion, but from anxiety. He was going to meet Emma without the Santa Claus costume, without masks or disguises. He would just be Richard Miller, a 38-year-old man who had made an impulsive promise to a child and now needed to prove he was worthy of her trust. When he reached the third floor, the door to apartment 32 was already open. Emma appeared in the doorway wearing a pink dress with white polka dots, her hair tied in a high ponytail, and a smile that lit up the entire hallway. "Hi, Mr. Richard," she said, giving a small bow that drew an involuntary smile from him. "Hi, Emma. How polite you are. Mom taught me to always greet visitors properly. Would you like to come in and see our home?" Before Richard could respond, Jessica appeared behind her daughter. She was wearing dark jeans, a white long-sleeve blouse and black flats. She had lightly made up her face, but Richard noticed she had tried to hide the fatigue on her face. "Good afternoon, Mr. Richard. I apologize for Emma's invitation, but the apartment is too small for visitors." "Nonsense, Mom. Our home is lovely," Emma protested, taking Richard's hand. "Come see my room, Mr. Richard. I have a collection of colorful stones." Richard looked at Jessica, silently asking for permission. She hesitated for a second, but nodded. "5 minutes, Emma. We don't want to be late for the appointment." The apartment was exactly as Richard had imagined, small but impeccably clean and organized. The living room had a 2-seater sofa with floral covers, a small TV on a simple stand, and a round table with 4 chairs that served both for meals and for Emma to do her homework. The walls were decorated. Emma showed drawings and some pictures of the two of them together during happy moments. "This photo here was at the zoo on my 6th birthday," Emma explained, pointing to a picture where she and Jessica were smiling in front of the monkey enclosure. "And this one was when I finished. Chemotherapy. Mom bought a small cake, but it was the best party of my life." In the second photo, Emma was bald but smiling brightly, hugging Jessica, both with tears in their eyes. The simplicity of the celebration, just mother and daughter, a small cake and a candle, touched Richard deeply. "It must have been a very special party," he said, kneeling down to Emma's height. "It was. Mom said it was the most important day of our lives." Emma's room was a world of its own. Despite the small space, Jessica had created a cozy environment with butterfly wallpaper, a small bed with a colorful quilt, a low bookshelf filled with books, and on the study table, the collection of stones Emma had mentioned. "Where do these stones come from?" Richard asked, examining the small, colorful rocks arranged in rows. "I find them when I go for walks with Mom. Each one has a special story. I found this one on the day the doctor said I was cured," she said, picking up a smooth blue stone. "And I found this one in the park when Mom was very sad. I kept it to give her strength." Emma handed the second stone to Richard, a small purple amethyst. "You can keep it to give you strength too." Richard was moved by the gesture. "Emma, this is very special. I'm sure you need it more than I do." "No, I don't need it anymore. Now that you are going to take care of Mom, I can share my strength stones." Jessica, who had been watching the interaction from the doorframe, approached. "Emma, we need to go. We don't want to be late for Mom's appointment." During the ride to the hospital, Emma occupied the back seat and didn't stop asking Richard questions. "Mr. Richard, do you have children?" "I have a daughter, Isabella. She's 12 years old." "Where is she?" "She studies at a school far from here." "And why doesn't she study here? Don't you like her?" The direct question made Richard uncomfortable. Jessica turned to reprimand Emma. "Emma, that's very personal." "No, it's okay," Richard interrupted. "It's a fair question." He looked in the rearview mirror. "Emma, Sometimes parents make decisions they think are best for their children, but later realize they might have been wrong. And did you make a mistake? I think so. Then why don't you bring her back? Because it's complicated. She's already used to it there, has friends, likes the school. But does she like school more or you? Richard stopped at the red light and fell silent. Emma had asked the question he had been avoiding for 3 years. I don't know, Emma. It's been a long time since I asked her that. Then you should ask. I always tell Mom when I don't like something. Jessica smiled discreetly. That's true. Emma is very direct with her opinions. When they arrived at Mount Sinai Hospital, Emma was impressed by the grandeur of the place. It was completely different from the general hospital where she had received treatment. Everything was modern, clean, quiet, and efficient. Wow, this hospital looks like a hotel, Emma whispered to her mother. It really is different, Jessica agreed, clearly uncomfortable with the luxury of the environment. The appointment with Dr. Johnson lasted 2 hours. While Jessica underwent tests and talked with the doctor, Richard stayed in the waiting room with Emma, who had brought a children's storybook to keep herself entertained. Mr. Richard, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you in love? With my mom? The question was so unexpected that Richard almost spilled the coffee he was drinking. Why are you asking that, Emma? Because you look at her the same way the prince looks at the princess in the movies I watch. And how is that look? Like she's the most important person in the whole world. Richard was left speechless. A 7-year-old had identified feelings he hadn't even been able to name. Emma, I admire your mother very much. She is a very strong and brave person. I know that, but that's not what I asked. You're very smart. You know. Everyone says that, but you didn't answer my question. I don't know how to answer your question, Emma. I'm still trying to understand what I feel. Emma closed the book and looked directly at him. Mr. Richard, can I give you some advice? Sure. My mom has suffered a lot. If you're not sure about your feelings, it's better not to confuse her. But if you're sure you want to take care of us, then you can stay. The maturity of her words shocked Richard. Emma spoke like an adult experienced in relationships, not like a 7-year-old. How do you know so much about these things? Because I've seen my mom get sad because of people who promised things and then left. I don't want that to happen again. What kind of people? My dad, for example. He promised he would come back after I got better, but he never did. Richard felt a sudden anger. Emma's father had abandoned the family during his daughter's cancer treatment. Emma, I promise I won't abandon you. How can I be sure? Because when I promise something, I always keep it, just like I promised I would take care of your mom. Emma studied him for a few seconds, as if evaluating the sincerity of his words. Okay, I will trust you, but if you break your promise, I will be very disappointed. Jessica was very upset. It's fair. When she left the appointment, her face was more relaxed than Richard had seen until then. How was it? He asked. Dr. Johnson is wonderful. She said the prognosis is very positive, especially because we caught it early. The treatment will be intensive for the first 3 months, but she is confident about the results. And when does it start? Next Monday. Chemotherapy once a week, plus daily medications. Emma got up and hugged her mother. I told you everything would be okay. You did, my love. On the way back home, the mood in the car was more relaxed. Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the long afternoon at the hospital, and Jessica finally relaxed her shoulder tension. Mr. Richard, she said softly, so as not to wake her daughter, thank you for today. Not just for the treatment, but for your patience with Emma. She can be intense. She's amazing, Jessica. I've never met a child with so much maturity and at the same time so much spontaneity. The circumstances forced her to grow up too fast. Sometimes I feel guilty about that. You have nothing to feel guilty for. Emma is special because she has you as her mother. Jessica looked out the window, watching the hustle and bustle of the streets of Little Tokyo. Can I ask a personal question? Of course. Why does your daughter study in Switzerland? Emma told me she asked about that. Richard sighed. After my wife passed away, I didn't know how to deal with Lily's pain. I thought it would be better for her to have stability, discipline, a first-world education. But wasn't it better for you? No, it was easier for me. I didn't have to face her grief along with mine. And how do you feel about that decision now? Regretful. Very regretful. Jessica was silent for a few minutes. It's never too late to change, Mr. Richard. If Emma has taught me anything, it's that family is what we have that's most important. When they arrived at Jessica's building, Emma woke up and insisted that Richard come up for coffee. Please, Mr. Richard, Mom makes the best coffee in the world. Jessica tried to dissuade her. Emma, Mr. Richard must have commitments. Actually, I don't have anything urgent, Richard said. If it's not a bother. Half an hour later, Richard was sitting at Jessica's small table, drinking coffee and eating the sweet bread that Emma had insisted on preparing. The simplicity of the moment, a quiet conversation, a child playing on the floor, the sound of the city coming through the window, was something he hadn't experienced in years. Mr. Richard, Emma said, looking up from the drawing she was making, do you want to be my friend? Of course I do, Emma. It would be an honor. Then you can just call me Emma. That's what my friends call me. And you can call me Uncle Richard if you want. Emma smiled from ear to ear. Uncle Richard, I like it. Now you are part of our family. Richard looked at Jessica, who was smiling discreetly at her daughter, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the sensation of being at home. 3 weeks later, Richard had become a constant presence in Jessica and Emma's lives. Every Monday, he took them to the hospital for chemotherapy sessions, and gradually he realized that those mornings had become the most anticipated moments of his week. Emma, who now exclusively called him Uncle Richard, had created a strict schedule of activities for them. On Tuesdays, he would pick her up from school and take her for ice cream in Little Tokyo, while they waited for Jessica to wake up from her post-chemo rest. On Thursdays, the three of them would have dinner together in the apartment, always simple dishes that Emma helped prepare. It was on one of those Thursdays, while Emma was in her room doing homework, that Jessica asked the question Richard knew would come sooner or later. Richard, she said, using his first name for the first time, does Lily know that you are spending time with us? They were in the small kitchen, washing dishes together. Richard was drying the plates while Jessica washed them, a domestic intimacy he had never experienced in his own home. No, he admitted. Lily and I don't talk much when she's in Switzerland. We exchange basic messages once a week. And when she comes back for the July holidays? I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Yet, Jessica turned off the faucet and faced him. Richard, you need to think about this. Emma has already become very attached to you. If your daughter comes back and doesn't accept our presence in your life, or if you decide that it's too complicated to balance both situations, Jessica, that won't happen. Are you sure? Because Lily is your real daughter. What are we exactly? The question hung in the air. Richard placed the dish towel in the sink and looked directly into Jessica's eyes. You are the family I chose, he said simply, and your blood family. Lily will always be my daughter, but that doesn't mean I can't have a chosen family too. Jessica dried her hands on her apron and leaned against the sink. Richard, can I be frank with you? Always. I'm scared. Of the treatment? No. The treatment is going very well. I'm afraid of getting used to this. Used to what? To you being part of our lives, to Emma having a present father figure, to myself feeling protected. Richard stepped closer to her, keeping a respectful distance. Why does that scare you? Because I've been through this before. Emma's father also started out being wonderful, present, caring. When we found out she had cancer, he disappeared overnight. He left a letter saying he couldn't handle the responsibility. Jessica, I'm not him. I know. At least I think I know. But I'm afraid of I'm fooling myself again. What can I do to show you that I'm different? Jessica fell silent for a few seconds. Be honest with me about your feelings. Not just about Emma, but about me. Richard felt his stomach tighten. It was the moment of truth he had been avoiding for weeks. Jessica, what I feel for you is complicated. Complicated how? I started getting close to you both because of Emma. I wanted to keep a promise, to help a child who touched me deeply. But over these weeks, yes, I fell in love with both of you, but especially with you. The words came out more directly than Richard had planned. Jessica looked at him in surprise. Richard, let me finish, please. I know our situation is delicate. I know you might think my feelings are confused with gratitude or some savior complex, but what I feel is real. And what exactly do you feel? I feel that when I'm with you both, I'm the best version of myself. I feel that you've made me a better father, a better man, a better person. And I feel that I want to protect and care for you, not because you need it, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Jessica remained silent for long seconds, processing his words. And what if I don't reciprocate your feelings? Then I'll continue being your friend and supporting your treatment. What I feel for you is not conditional on reciprocity, Jessica. And your daughter, how will she react when she finds out you have romantic feelings for another woman? I will talk to Lily when she returns. It will be a difficult conversation, but necessary. At that moment, Emma appeared in the kitchen in her pajamas, carrying a storybook. Uncle Richard, can you read me a story before bed? Richard looked at Jessica, asking for permission. You can go, she said softly. I'll finish up here in the kitchen. In Emma's room, Richard sat on the edge of the small bed while she snuggled under the colourful quilt. What story do you want to hear today? Can you make up a story about a family? What kind of family? A family that forms because people choose each other, not just because they were born together. Richard was surprised by the request, but began to invent. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived alone in a very big house. He had everything money could buy, but he didn't have the most important thing, true love. One day, during Christmas time, he met a very special girl and her brave mother. Is this story about us? Emma interrupted with a mischievous smile. Do you think it is? I think so. And how does the story end? How would you like it to end? Emma thought for a moment. I would like the man, the brave woman, and the special girl to be together forever, and that he brings his daughter to meet the new family, and that they all live very happily. That's a very beautiful ending, Emma. Uncle Richard, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to marry my mommy? The direct question left Richard speechless. Why are you asking that? Because I see how you look at each other, and because I really want to have a complete family. Emma, these things are complicated. They're not. Either you like her or you don't. I already asked her if she likes you. And what did she say? She said she's confused because she's afraid of getting hurt again. But I saw that she gets happy when you arrive. Richard was touched by the girl's perception. And would you like me to be part of your family? You already are, Uncle Richard. We just need to make it official. In the living room, Jessica had finished tidying up the kitchen and was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. When Richard came out of Emma's room, she looked up. Did she fall asleep? She did. But before that, she asked some interesting questions. About what? About us, about family, about marriage. Jessica sighed. Emma has a very vivid imagination about these things. Or maybe she just sees things more simply than we adults do. Richard, sit here. We need to talk. He sat next to her on the couch, keeping a respectful distance. About what you said in the kitchen, she began. Jessica, if I made you uncomfortable, you made me confused, not uncomfortable, because I also have feelings for you. Richard's heart raced. You do? I do. But they're complicated, mixed with gratitude, emotional dependency, fear of being vulnerable because of the medical treatment. And what if they weren't complicated? If the situation were different, do you think we could have something real? Jessica looked him directly in the eyes. I think we already have something real, Richard. The question is whether we have the courage to admit it and deal with the consequences. What consequences? Your daughter coming back and not accepting the situation. My treatment not working. You getting tired of the responsibility of a ready-made family. Emma suffering if this doesn't work out. Jessica, Richard gently interrupted, every family faces risks. The difference is that we're entering this aware of the challenges. And are you sure you want to take those risks? I am. And you? Jessica remained silent for long minutes. Finally, she moved closer to him on the couch. Richard, if we do this, you have to be honest, completely honest. With Emma, with me, with your daughter when she comes back. I agree. And you have to be patient. I need time to fully trust someone. Again. As much time as you need. And what if your daughter doesn't accept our presence in your life? Then I will have to work for her to understand. Lily is my daughter, but you and Emma are also my family now. Jessica moved even closer to him, until their faces were just a few centimeters apart. Richard, I'm scared of falling in love with you. Why? Because if you leave, you'll take my heart with you. I'm not going anywhere, Jessica, I promise. How can I? Are you sure? Instead of responding with words, Richard gently cupped Jessica's face in his hands and kissed her softly. It was a kiss full of promises, tenderness, and hope for a future they were beginning to build together. When they parted, Jessica had tears in her eyes. Don't let me down, Richard. I won't. Never. And for the first time in 3 years, Richard Miller felt truly at home. In July, the winter in Los Angeles brought not only the typical cold mornings and grey skies of the season, but also the return of Lily for school break. Richard spent the 2 weeks leading up to his daughter's arrival in a state of growing anxiety, trying to find the right way to introduce his new family reality. Jessica, who had already completed half of her treatment with extremely positive results, sensed Richard's tension and tried to be understanding, even knowing that their future would depend heavily on Lily's reaction. Uncle Richard, why are you so nervous? Emma asked one Saturday morning while they were having breakfast in the little Tokyo apartment. In recent weeks, Richard had practically moved in there, sleeping on the sofa and helping with household chores. I'm not nervous, Emma, just worried. Is it because of Lily? Richard was surprised by the girl's perception. How do you know about Lily? Mum told me you have a daughter who is coming back from far-away school and that she might not like us very much. Jessica, who was preparing smoothies in the kitchen, approached the table. Emma, it's not that she won't like you. It's just that it will be a new situation for her, too. But if she really doesn't like us, will Uncle Richard have to choose between us and her? The direct question made Richard uncomfortable. It was exactly the scenario he feared the most. Emma, Family isn't about choosing between people. It's about finding a way for everyone to be together and happy. And what if you can't? Richard knelt down to Emma's level and took her small hands. Emma, do you remember the promise I made to you when I was Santa Claus? I remember that you would take care of Mom. Did I keep that promise? You did. So now I'm going to make another promise. No matter what happens with Lily, I will always be a part of your lives. It may not be exactly like it is now, but I will never abandon you. Serge, Emma studied his face for a few seconds, as she always did when she wanted to be sure that an adult was being honest with her. Okay, I trust you. On Monday, Richard went to pick up Lily at Los Angeles International Airport. He hadn't seen her in person for 6 months and was shocked by the changes he found. Lily had grown several inches, was thinner and more poised, and carried an air of sophisticated indifference that hadn't existed before. "Hi, Dad," she said when she spotted him in the arrivals area, giving him a formal and quick hug. "Lily, how you've grown. I've missed you so much." "I missed you too," she replied, but without showing real emotion. "How's business?" "Business is good, but I want to know about you. How was the semester? How are your studies?" "Everything's fine. I got excellent grades in all subjects. I joined the school's equestrian team, and I'm studying Mandarin in my spare time." Richard watched his daughter as she spoke. Lily reported her achievements as if she were giving a business report, without enthusiasm or genuine joy. "And friends? Are you happy there?" "I am. It's an excellent school. The teachers are very qualified, and the students come from the best families in Europe." During the drive to the penthouse in Beverly Hills, Lily maintained a polite but distant conversation, asking about the company's investments, the real estate market, and international politics. It was like talking to a 12-year-old adult who had completely lost the spontaneity of childhood. In the penthouse, Lily went straight to her room, which Richard had kept exactly as she had left it 6 months before. Half an hour later, she came down for dinner that he had specially prepared for her arrival. "Dad," she said during the meal, "can I ask why you look different?" "Different how?" "More relaxed, less serious, and you've lost a little weight." Richard realized that Lily was very observant, a trait she had inherited from him. "I think I've been sleeping better lately. What do you attribute this improvement to?" "Lily, I actually need to talk to you about some changes that have happened in my life in the past few months." She put her fork down and looked at him with full attention. "What kind of changes?" "I've met some people who have become very important to me. A woman named Jessica and her daughter Emma." "Important how?" Richard took a deep breath. "Important as family." Lily was silent for several seconds, processing the information. "Do you have a girlfriend?" "I do." "And she has a daughter?" "She does, 7 years old." "And where do they live?" "In Little Tokyo." Lily nodded slowly, as if she were putting together a puzzle. "And you're living there with them?" "I'm spending a lot of time there, yes." "I see." Lily went back to eating, seemingly calm. "Can I meet them?" The response surprised Richard. He had prepared for resistance, jealousy, perhaps even an emotional outburst. "Of course you can, whenever you want." "How about tomorrow? I would like to evaluate the situation in person." The way Lily spoke, "evaluate the situation," sounded strangely adult and calculating. "Lily, they are not a situation to be evaluated. They are important people to me." "I understand, but I still would like to meet them." The next morning, Richard called Jessica, extremely nervous. "Jessica, Lily wants to meet you today." "How did she react when you told her?" "Better than I expected. Maybe too well." "What do you mean?" She was Very rational about everything, cold, as if it were a business transaction. Richard, she's only 12. Maybe it's her way of dealing with the situation. Or maybe she learned to hide her feelings like I used to. So let's welcome her warmly and give her time to get used to us. At 2 in the afternoon, Richard arrived at the little Tokyo apartment with Lily. During the ride, she had asked dozens of questions. How long he had known Jessica, how they supported themselves financially, why Jessica only had one child, what kind of education Emma was receiving. When they reached the 3rd floor, Emma was waiting at the apartment door, wearing her best dress and with her hair styled with special care. "Hi," she said excitedly when she saw Lily. "You're Lily. I'm Emma. Uncle Richard talks a lot about you." Lily observed Emma with curiosity, clearly surprised by the younger girl's spontaneity. "Hi, Emma. Nice to meet you." The formality of the response left Emma confused, but she kept smiling. "Do you want to see my room? I have a really cool collection of stones." "Maybe later," Lily replied politely. Jessica appeared at the door wearing a light blue blouse and smiling warmly. "Lily, what a pleasure to finally meet you. Richard talks a lot about you. Please, come in." Lily greeted Jessica with a formal handshake and entered the apartment. Richard watched her reaction to the environment. She discreetly looked around, clearly taking in the small size, simple furniture, and basic decor. "You have a very cozy apartment," Lily said. "Thank you. It's small, but it's our home," Jessica replied, not letting the girl's formality intimidate her. Throughout the afternoon, Richard observed the interactions between the 3 women in his life. Emma constantly tried to engage Lily in conversations and games, but bumped into the polite coldness of the older girl. Lily answered all of Emma's questions, but mechanically, as if she were following a social protocol. "Lily," Emma said at one point, "do you want to play house with me?" "I don't play house. I'm too old for those games." "Then what do you like to play?" "I don't play anymore. I prefer to read, study, and practice serious sports." Emma looked visibly confused by the answer. For her, a child who didn't play was something incomprehensible. "But you're only 12, she insisted. "How do you not play?" "Emma," Jessica gently intervened, "everyone likes different things. Lily probably has more mature interests." Lily looked at Jessica with an expression that could be gratitude or relief that someone understood her position. By the end of the afternoon, when Richard and Lily were preparing to return to the penthouse, Emma approached the older girl. "Lily, you didn't like me, did you?" The direct question caught Lily off guard. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you were polite, but you weren't warm, and I felt like you didn't want Uncle Richard to stay here with us." Lily was silent for a few seconds, clearly uncomfortable with Emma's brutal honesty. "It's not that I didn't like you, Emma. It's just, all of this is very confusing for me." "What's confusing?" "My dad has always been just mine. Now he has a new family, and I don't know what my place is in this story." Emma took Lily's hand. "You're really his daughter. Your place is the most important of all. But you all live with him now. He doesn't live with us. He only stays here during the day, and he always talks about you, always." Lily looked at Emma as if she were seeing her for the first time. "Really? Really? He has a picture of you in his wallet and always shows it to everyone, and when you sent messages from school, he was very happy." During the ride back home, Lily sat in silence in the passenger seat. Richard tried to start a conversation a few times, but she only responded with monosyllables. "Lily, what did you think of Jessica and Emma?" "They're interesting people." "Just interesting." "Dad, can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Are you happier now than you were before?" The question caught him off guard. "I am much happier." "Because of them?" because of them, but also because of changes I've made in myself. What kind of changes? I've learned to value real relationships instead of just focusing on work. I've learned that family is more important than money, and I've learned that I can be a better dad. Lily remained silent until they reached the building. "Dad," she said as they entered the elevator, "Emma said you always talk about me to them." "Always. And that you get happy when you receive my messages." "I do. Very happy. Why have you never shown that to me?" The simple question hit Richard like a lightning bolt. He stopped the elevator between floors and turned to his daughter. "Lily, you're right. I've never shown it, and I apologize for that." "Why? Why have you never shown that you care about me?" "Because after your mom died, I was afraid to love too much and suffer again, so I closed myself off emotionally to everyone, including you." Lily looked at him with tears in her eyes, the first real display of emotion since she arrived in Los Angeles. "And now, are you not afraid anymore?" "I'm afraid, yes, but I've learned that it's worth taking the risk." "Dad," Lily said, her voice trembling, "I was also afraid to show that I was suffering because I thought you would push me even further away." Richard hugged his daughter right there in the stopped elevator, and they both cried together for the first time since the death of his wife. "I will never push you away again, Lily, never." "Promise?" "I promise." "And what about Jessica and Emma? Will they stay too?" "If you accept them, yes." Lily pulled away from the hug and looked at her dad. "Can I try to get to know them better before deciding?" "Of course you can, as long as you need." "And what if I can't get used to it?" "Then we will find a way to make it work. That works for everyone." "Okay, Dad, I'll try. For you, and for me too." When the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, Richard knew he had taken the first step toward reuniting his family. It would be a long and delicate process, but for the first time since his wife's death, he felt he had a real chance to be happy with all the people he loved. 2 weeks after their first meeting, Lily surprised Richard by asking to visit Jessica and Emma again. This time she wanted to go alone, without his presence, claiming she needed to evaluate the family dynamics without external influence, a phrase that sounded strangely mature for a 12-year-old girl. "Lily, are you sure you want to go alone?" Richard asked, concerned about what might happen. "Dad, I need to understand if they like me for who I am, or just because I'm your daughter." Richard recognized in his daughters words the same skepticism he had always felt toward people who approached him for their own interests. Lily had inherited not only his business acumen, but also his tendency toward skepticism in relationships. On Saturday morning, Lily arrived at Jessica's apartment in Little Tokyo, carrying a heavy backpack. Emma greeted her at the door with the same enthusiasm as always, seemingly immune to the initial coldness Lily had shown. "Lily, it's great that you came. Did you bring anything in your backpack?" Emma asked curiously. "I brought some books and games. I thought we could do activities together." Jessica watched, the girls' interaction with interest. Lily had clearly prepared for this visit as if it were a business meeting. "What kind of games?" Emma asked excitedly. "Chess, checkers, complex puzzles. And I brought some age-appropriate classic literature books." Emma made an involuntary grimace. "I don't know how to play chess, and I don't really like very serious books." "I can teach you how to play chess. It's a very useful game for developing logical reasoning and strategy." "Okay," Emma agreed, though not very enthusiastically. Jessica, who was observing the conversation from the kitchen, decided to intervene. "Girls, how about we start with something you both might enjoy? Emma, why don't you show Lily your stone collection? And Lily, I'm sure you have some interesting stories about Switzerland." The two girls settled into Emma's room. Lily observed the small, colourful stones carefully organised on the study table, each with a label explaining where it had been found. "Why do you collect stones?" Lily asked, genuinely curious. "Because each one reminds me of a special moment. I found this one the day I met Uncle Richard at the mall. This other one was on the day my mom started treatment and was scared, so I kept it to give her strength." Lily picked up one of the stones, a small, translucent rose quartz. "And this one? I found this one yesterday when my mum told me you were coming to visit us. I kept it for good luck for our meeting." "You kept a special stone for my visit." "I did, because I really want us to be friends." Lily fell silent, clearly touched by the simplicity and sincerity of the gesture. "Emma, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Don't you get jealous of having to share Uncle Richard with me?" Emma thought for a moment. "No, because he's not my real dad. He's your real dad. I just borrow him sometimes." "What do you mean, borrow?" "It's like when I share my toys with the kids at school. They still belong to me, but it's more fun when everyone plays together." The simple yet profound analogy left Lily reflecting. She had never thought of family relationships in that way, as something that could be shared instead of divided. "And what if I don't want to share?" "Then you would be alone with him, but he would be sad because he likes being with all of us together." "How do you know he would be sad?" "Because I see it in his eyes. When he talks about you, he's happy and sad at the same time." "Happy and sad how?" "Happy because he loves you very much, but sad because you're far away and you don't talk properly." Lily sat on Emma's small bed, processing the younger girl's observations. "Emma, you're very smart for only being 7. Everyone says that, but I don't want to be smart. I just want the people I love to be happy." "And who are the people you love?" "Mom, Uncle Richard, you, Ms. Kim from the building, my teacher. You love me, but you barely know me." "I do know you. Uncle Richard talks about you all the time. I know you're very smart, that you go to a fancy school, that you speak several languages, that you like horses, and I know you're sad because your dad doesn't show that he loves you." The last observation hit Lily hard. "Did he tell you that?" "He didn't need to tell me. I see that you two are the same. You're both afraid to show feelings because you think you'll get hurt." Lily was impressed by Emma's perception. "And how come you're not afraid?" "I used to be. When I was sick, I was very afraid of dying and leaving my mom alone. But I learned that it's better to love while we can, because life can change very quickly. And what if the person you love leaves? At least you had the love while it lasted. It's better than never having had it." During lunch, Lily observed the dynamic between Jessica and Emma. It was completely different from the formal and distant relationship she had with her dad. Mother and daughter talked about everything, laughed together, constantly touched. Hair strokes, spontaneous hugs, kisses on the cheek. "Jessica," Lily said during the meal, "can I ask a personal question?" "Of course, dear." "How do you manage to be so present with Emma?" Jessica paused. Lily was eating, realizing that the question was deeper than it seemed. "What do you mean by present?" "You talk about everything, hug each other, laugh together. It's like you're friends, not just mother and daughter." "And what is your relationship with your dad like?" Lily hesitated. "More formal. We talk about school, grades, achievements. We don't talk about feelings." "And how would you like it to be?" "I don't know. I've never thought about it." Sarah, who had been listening to the conversation, got up from her chair and approached Lily. "Lily, do you want to try playing a little, just to see how it is?" "Playing what?" "Playing Happy Family. You can pretend to be my older sister and that mom is your mom too." Lily looked at Jessica, who smiled encouragingly. I don't know how to play pretend, Sarah. It's easy. You just need to act like it's real and see how you feel. Half an hour later, the three of them were on the living room floor, putting together a puzzle. Sarah had convinced Lily to pretend they were a normal family, spending a relaxing Saturday afternoon. Lily, Sarah said as they searched for the edge pieces, how does it feel to be my older sister? Lily involuntarily smiled. It's different, lighter. And Jessica as Mom? Lily looked at Jessica, who was patiently helping them sort the pieces by color. It's nice to have someone who asks how I feel, not just how my grades are. Jessica approached Lily and affectionately stroked her hair. Lily, you can talk to me about anything, always. About feelings, fears, doubts. You don't have to be strong all the time. But I've always been strong, ever since Mom died. And that's admirable. But sometimes we can let our guard down and just be a 12-year-old girl. Lily felt tears in her eyes. For years, no one had treated her like a child who could have vulnerabilities. Jessica, can I ask a very personal question? Of course. Do you think you could, like me, as a daughter? The question came out more vulnerable than Lily had intended. Sarah stopped playing and paid attention to the conversation. Lily, I already like you a lot, since the first day Richard told me about you, even though I'm complicated and cold. You're not cold, you're guarded, and it's normal to be that way after going through difficult losses. Sarah approached Lily and took her hand. Lily, do you want to be my real sister? What do you mean? If Uncle Richard becomes our real dad, and Mum becomes your real mum, we become sisters, and I've always wanted an older sister. Lily looked at both of them, feeling an emotion she hadn't experienced in years, the feeling of belonging to a real family. I would really like that. Then it's decided, Sarah announced. Now we are a family. Sarah, Jessica laughed. Things aren't that simple. Why not? Lily asked. If we all want this, why can't it be simple? Jessica was surprised by the question. Lily was showing the same emotional spontaneity as Sarah. Because we still need to talk to your dad, adjust a lot of practical things. But do you want to? Lily insisted. I really do, Jessica admitted. And do you accept me as your older sister? Lily asked Sarah. I accept you. It will be the best thing in the world. When Richard arrived to pick up Lily in the late afternoon, he found the three of them hugging on the couch, watching an animated movie and eating popcorn. Lily was relaxed in a way he hadn't seen in years, laughing at the movie's antics with Sarah. How was your day? He asked, clearly surprised by the domestic scene. It was perfect, Dad, Lily said, using a tone of voice he hadn't heard since she was little. Can I stay for dinner? Of course, if Jessica doesn't mind. Of course, I don't mind. It will be a pleasure. During dinner, Lily told Richard about everything she had done during the day. The games with Sarah, the conversations with Jessica, the discoveries about her own ability to be a normal child. Dad, she said as they were leaving, when can I come back? Whenever you want, sweetheart. Tomorrow? Richard laughed. If Jessica and Sarah can handle it, we can handle it, Sarah shouted from the apartment window. In the car, Lily was quiet for a few minutes. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. Today was the happiest day I've had since Mom died. Why? Because for the first time I felt part of a real family, not just a daughter with responsibilities, but a daughter who can be a child, an older sister, a person who matters for who she is, not for what she achieves. Richard felt his heart tighten with emotion and guilt. Lily, I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to be perfect all the time. It wasn't your fault, Dad. We were both suffering and didn't know how to help each other. And now we have Jessica and Sarah to teach us how to be a happy family." Richard parked the car in front of their building and hugged his daughter. "I love you, Lily, very much. I love you too, Dad, and I love our new family." For the first time in 3 years, Richard Miller was sure he had made all the right decisions. His family was complete, not just by blood ties, but by bonds of choice, love, and mutual care. And best of all, Lily had not only accepted Jessica and Sarah, but she had discovered in them the family she had always dreamed of having, but never knew was possible to build. 6 months later, on a sunny April morning marking the arrival of autumn, the family formed by choice and love celebrated 2 important milestones. The successful end of Richard Miller had gained a complete family. Jessica had faced death and found a new beginning. And Richard had discovered that sometimes life offers us a second chance through the most unlikely people, in the most unexpected moments. In the dark of the room he now shared with the woman he loved. In the house they had chosen together to shelter the family they had built by choice and not by chance, Richard Miller finally understood that he had found the true meaning of being home. And it all had started with a brave child who believed that a stranger dressed as Santa Claus could save the person she loved most in the world.